'Tis the season for a DualShockers video game giveaway. Stay tuned to the end of this video for details on what the game is and how to enter. Now, back to your regularly scheduled video content. Godfall is the latest title published by Gearbox Entertainment and released alongside Sony's new behemoth, the PS5, aiming to create a new genre of action RPG and gear-driven experience, the looter slasher. Unfortunately, Counterplay Games' attempts falls flat on its face and never ascends to the lofty heights it strives to reach. Godfall's story is one of the most bare-bones and non-starters in a game that I've played in some time. You are Orin, and your evil brother Macross wants to become a god. In your attempt to stop him, he cleans your clock. And from there you have to wake up a weird magical AI-like being composed of 3 faces, spending a lot of your time running back and forth between the game's only 2 NPCs to hear about the next of your big bad brother's generals you'll have to be before you can finally get to thrashing your brother. If you don't, apparently the universe will be destroyed. Before Godfall's release, Gearbox recruited lore video guru My Name is Biff to create a 4-part series of videos that dives into the history and world that the game takes place in. If you were to just sit and play the game though, skipping those videos, 90% of the lore would be pretty much lost on you. This adventure you embark on consists of repetitive missions handed out by the previously mentioned NPC duo that'll send you to 3 different elementally themed areas to gather coins to unlock the next general. You do this for about 8 to 10 hours until you finally confront Macross. If you do want to get more out of the game's universe and lore, your best bet is just to check out one of Biff's lore videos instead. Godfall can't quite decide what it wants to be. Previews and trailers for the game give a sense that the game is fast-paced and much more hack-and-slash-like than it really is. Combat feels much more akin to the parry-heavy, methodical combat of a Souls-like or Monster Hunter, where you have to pay close attention to where you aim your attacks and when you strike. What's especially troublesome is that this game, in its current state, can't do either well. The overly long cooldowns on skill, which admittedly can be decreased by items and gearing your build in that direction, paired with the inability to cancel animations and actions midway through, say blocking or parrying an incoming attack, remove the ability to play fast. Instead, you'll have to decide whether or not it's worth committing to an attack and leaving yourself open to a potentially devastating enemy rebuttal. On the flip side, playing more restrained has its share of headaches too. Targeting is a nightmare, and using some weapons, even while locked on, it can be easy to miss. Attacks can push enemies outside the range of finishing combos, which can easily leave you open for a few frustrating seconds. What is particularly infuriating though, is that there's a lack of a function to quickly toggle between the targets around you. Instead, you have to cancel a lock-on, look at an enemy, and then try and hope that the lock-on will pick the right one. It blows my mind that this toggle feature is missing. Another annoyance is how many enemies shoot you from long range or teleport around. The very few long-range attacks available to you, primarily your shield throw, are attached to aggravatingly long cooldowns. This means you'll be forced to try and run up close to enemies that keep teleporting away or shooting you as you attempt to do so. If you stick with Godfall, finishing the campaign unlocks an equally uninspired post-game grind. You open up 2 post-game modes, the first of which, the Dreamstones, serves as the best way to reach the max level of 50. You'll tackle a handful of quests and unlock a final round where you'll have to fight a gauntlet of mini-bosses or previous generals. The bosses will be at a higher level and new attacks will be unlocked for them to use against you. While it can make things more interesting, it doesn't really change things up enough to force you to rethink your strategies. It is repetitive, but it can be done quick enough and nets you enough loot to make it kinda worthwhile. After reaching max level, you can dive into the Tower of Trials mode. Your goal here is to complete as many trials or levels as you can as you climb the tower. You're gaining buffs as you go, contending with wave after wave after wave of progressively more difficult enemy mobs. This mode could be fun with a team of players, but playing it on your own is probably the most notable slog of the game, where the payoff really wasn't worth the time investment. When it comes to multiplayer, developer Counterplay Games made the dumbfounding decision not to include matchmaking. This means that unless you have friends that also own Godfall, on the same platform no less, since the game has forsaken crossplay, you'll be left to loot on your own. It's unfortunate since you almost have to have a full party to contend with the Tower of Trials. All these gripes would be made much more bearable if it weren't for two things. First off, this game just doesn't run well. I experienced several drops of performance during combat, including stutters and slowdown. It's a mood killer when you manage to do something really cool and the game hangs for a second or two because it can't keep up. The second is that this game really has no reason to be a full-price $70 game. From the performance issues, repetitive and uninspired missions, to missing features, this feels more like it should have been topped off at maybe a $30 price tag, if not a free-to-play model with microtransaction element. Now at this point, I'm sure you're thinking to yourself that I believe there's nothing even remotely redeemable about Godfall, and that isn't true. Underneath the rubbish is a sparkly, if not overly shiny, gem buried underneath, which makes everything I've said so far sting even worse. From the flashy valor plates to the weapons, each containing their own unique lore and story, the gear here is some of the most badass looking fantasy weapons and armor I have seen in video games in a long, long time. The fact that Counterplay Games has gone out of their way to give each weapon an artifact, an amulet, and charm and ring its own unique history that you can read up on is a labor of love, and it really does pay off. I love checking out the lore of the new items or equipment I got, and I was excited to unlock each new armor set, even if that excitement didn't necessarily translate into them playing differently.
The Mobius Valor Plate represents joy and is favored by those who like to act first.
I found myself particularly drawn to the Phoenix Plate with its flowy belt-like items hanging off of it. Godfall also has a great level up progression tree that offers players many options in how they want to build their character out. What's more, each node has 5 levels that you can invest in, none of which are tied behind a level requirement. Should you decide you want to try a different build or gear out differently, returning your points for a respec is as simple as pressing a button. It's fantastic. My only issue with this system is, strangely, some important combat mechanics are unavailable to you until you unlock it on this board. Mechanics that were often touted in weapon stats, like Rampage, weren't immediately accessible because I hadn't put a point in it yet. However, you can get these open reasonably early on, so it's not as big of an issue as the one that I mentioned previously. Between the leveling system and the gear, I did get hooked on that oh-so-sweet looter loop while grinding to the max level in the Dreamstones. The constant drop of higher level gear and the desire to continue to improve my explodey fire build scratched that itch quite nicely, which only continued to make all the game's issues hurt more. There's something special here, but the gem that is Godfall is buried deep, deep underneath a pile of issues and lackluster content. Godfall hamstrings most of its good ideas, crippling the game out of the gate. Offering multiplayer but no matchmaking or crossplay, throwing numerous enemies at you at a time without a way to toggle between targets, forcing you to chase after enemies hitting you with projectiles when your only long-range attack is on a too long cooldown, and of course that $70 price tag. It'll be interesting to see what shape Godfall is in a year from now, but I suggest you hold off on falling down this hole for the time being.
It's over, Macros.
Oh, you're wrong, Orin. I am the future.
You are a monster. You've done nothing but fight and destroy.
This is the world we live in, Orin.
As you wish, brother.
That's right. Thanks to our friends over at 11-Bit Studios, we are giving out a bunch of codes for the Nintendo Switch version of The War of Mine Complete Edition. It's a unique survival title set in a war-ravaged country and winner of numerous accolades. It's even been added to the official reading list for schools over in Poland. Even Call of Duty can't tout as being required media, and that series makes $1 billion. This edition comes with all the previously released content, so you get a lot of game here. To win, just click on the link down in the video's description, fill out the doobly-doo, and simple as that. Winners will be announced on December 20th. These codes are good for the North American eShop, so winners will need an active account on there to redeem.
Good luck.